Hi there, I'm Simon Head and welcome to what is my first video blog covering UFC here for the sun.co.uk. What we're going to talk about in this one, nice and easy, nice simple one that anyone can get involved with. UFC Fight Night London. Who's going to be on the fight card? Everyone likes to play matchmaker, everyone likes to put people in the main event, decide who's going to be the co-main event, but building a full fight card top to bottom is a pretty tricky process. You've got to balance everything up. You've got to consider the other events that are happening around it in the calendar. You've also got to look at the commitments of the fighters involved, who they've recently fought, any medical suspensions that have to be taken into consideration. And obviously you need to look at the relevance to each of the fighters' respective careers. So it's a real juggling act. And from talking to Joe Carr, who's the VP of International Development, he said just putting the calendar together was a massive jigsaw puzzle, but if you can imagine, each one of those pieces is in itself a mini jigsaw puzzle as well. That's what you've got with each individual fight card. The UFC have managed to book the O2 Arena, which I am reliably informed is the busiest venue on the planet for, well, I think it's the busiest indoor arena on the planet, basically. Hard to get a good time slot on there and actually get yourself booked in. So the UFC have got that done. February the 27th, 2016 is the date. Get that in your diary. Tickets will go on sale on December the 4th on Ticketmaster. So make sure you keep an eye open on that. That's on general sale. So if you've got Fight Pass, UFC Fight Club membership, you may well be able to pick those tickets up a little bit earlier. Likewise, if you've got a UFC newsletter login as well, also password from them, you may well be able to get the tickets a day or two earlier. About 16 to 18,000 seats. It's going to be a big event in terms of scale. How big is the fight card going to be? And that's the big thing. So I've had a look at the fight card. I've had a look at the importance of London and how the UFC, I think, need to make a bit of a statement in this region. The EMEA shows have been they've been okay for the markets that they're in, but they haven't had as much relevance to the world as a whole. So you look at the Poland event, that was very relevant for Poland. They also brought in a big name in Mirko Krokop, who is from Croatia, which isn't that far. Big European support for him. You look at Dublin, the fight card was packed with British and Irish fighters. And then obviously you look up in Scotland, in Glasgow, again, you know, they tried to put as many local guys and girls on that card as possible. I think London will probably be a little bit more of the same, but I think they're going to look to chuck a little bit more stardust on this one and put a bit more firepower at the very top of the card. You know, the thing with the Ireland card obviously falling down a little bit, losing first the co-main event of Ben Rothwell and Stipe Miocic, and then obviously in Fight Week losing the main event of Joe Duffy versus Dustin Poirier. That really did decimate the card, and while the fights and the fighters involved really stepped up and did a fantastic job to deliver an entertaining fight for the fans who did watch, I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few who opted not to actually tune in and watch it, especially those international fans who would have been having to log in and watch on UFC Fight Pass. So what are the UFC going to do for UFC Fight Night London? I've looked to put this card together, and I've had to make a few assumptions. So look, I'll get these off my chest first so that you're aware of the sort of the guidelines I've kind of worked with. First off, I've assumed that no one is going to get injured between now and then. That's a given. Secondly, I've assumed that all these fights are what you would consider acceptable fights to the fighters involved. So I'd like to think that hopefully if these fights were actually matched up by the UFC matchmakers, the fighters on either side of the coin will both be happy enough to accept the fight. The other thing I've looked at is the high possibility, given what's going to be on the top of this card, that this will be a Fox TV show. So obviously it will be on UFC Fight Pass, but I think Fox have the option of picking up some of these shows and showing them on Fox Sports in the US. They did it for Glasgow, they didn't do it for Dublin. So they've got the option of picking and choosing on that front. They've got slots to fill. London may well be one of the ones that they've already targeted. And with the main event that I've got planned, and hopefully it's the main event that the UFC have got planned, but who knows, right? But if the UFC have put a main event together of the level of this one, Fox can't do anything but take this fight card. So we'll kick these things right off. Final thing, none of these fights are made, right? These are all fights that I have put together basically based on what I think the UFC would do very well to put together. As far as I'm aware, there is no official announcement on any of these fights. If any of them come to fruition, happy days, we're going to have some fun and games with these fights. If not, it'd be interesting to see what does end up on that UFC London fight card. This is just my take. My dozen fights, 12 fight card for UFC Fight Night London. Right, I've been jabbering on for far too long, so let's kick things off. We'll start at the top of the card with the main event of the evening. The fight that will basically put the bums on seats. We'll sell the tickets. We'll get Fox TV to say, yes, we want to show this on Fox Sports 1. Michael the Count Bisping is an absolute cert to be on this fight card. Whether it's as a co-main or as a main event, I think he's absolutely a shoe-in to be on this card. On my card, he's a main event. And the reason he's the main event is because he's taking on Anderson the Spider Silva. This is a World Championship fight that should have happened 2 years ago, before Silva got beat by Chris Weidman. Michael Bisping fought Chael Sonnen, and I haven't met a person yet who thinks that Chael Sonnen won that fight. 2 of the 3 judges on the night thought that he did. So, yeah, they gave Sonnen the decision. Sonnen thought that Bisping won the fight. Bisping thought that he won the fight 2 rounds to 1. But he didn't get it. Subsequently, Chael has admitted that he was artificially fueled, shall we say. Obviously, we know about the testosterone replacement therapy, which was legal back then, but apparently there were other factors involved. He spoke to Michael about that on his podcast, I believe. So that's one that should have gone Michael Bisping's way. That was a title shot that he should have had, and he should have won that one in the octagon. It looked to all intents and purposes as if he did. He didn't get it. Also, he lost to Vitor Belfort. Vitor Belfort obviously won by TKO against Michael Bisping. He was obviously powered by TRT, which was legal back then, not legal now. Big question marks over the validity of some of these results, given the fact that they were powered by this stuff. But they're in the record books. We can't do a lot about those. But you look back at that Chael Sonnen fight. That was the one for me. So, that considered, Michael Bisping should have been in a title fight with Anderson Silva, which raises the question, how would he have done? We will never know, because that was 2 years ago. Both fighters have changed since then. But what we can do is find out how they'll get on in 2016. So let's get them in the main event, put them on the top of the bill for UFC Fight Night London. Anderson Silva needs a fight. He's going to be coming back from his drugs ban. And possibly the worst defence of a drugs ban in living memory. If any of you saw that Nevada State Athletic Commission live stream on Fight Pass, that was something. That was something. If it's knocking about on YouTube, find it and watch it. It's incredible. It's incredible. But Anderson Silva, he's going to need a fight. He's going to be available again from the end of Jan. So late February fight date should be no problem at all. I'd put him on the main event against Michael Bisping. It's not a World Championship fight. It doesn't have to be for a UFC Fight Night event. But they're both UFC royalty, so this is one that I think the fans can buy into. It's also one I think that the overseas media and the overseas fans, particularly in the States, can buy into. Anderson Silva is an icon of the sport. Michael Bisping is a very popular fighter and a polarising fighter as well. You know, he still has his detractors. People like to tune in to watch him get his ass kicked. It doesn't happen too often, though. He's a wily veteran these days. He knows what he's doing, and I'm sure he'd fancy his chances strongly against Anderson Silva, especially in London. Bisping has never lost a fight on UK soil, and you won't want that to change if he gets on that London card. So that would be my main event. And as I say, that would guarantee the Fox TV coverage as well. The co-main event, and this is a tad controversial because I've just put Bisping versus Anderson Silva on the main event. I'm putting a World Championship fight as a co-main event, which may fly in the face of all protocol with UFC matchmaking. But hey, this is just me yakking. So that's what I'm going to do. Ioane and Jacek versus Claudia Gadelha. Now, Joanna is obviously set for action at UFC 193 in Melbourne, Australia, 2 weeks from now. I think she's going to absolutely fly through that fight with Valerie Letourneau and will come out largely unscathed. If she does, she should be fit and ready for a quick turnaround. And Claudia Gadelha is the fight that I think needs to happen. That's the best fight you can make at 115 pounds in that strawweight division. Gadelha's had injury issues of her own. Hopefully she's over those now. If she's back and she's fully fit, that's an easy fight to make. I'll put that on the card. The other relevance of this is there's a large Polish contingent here in the UK, particularly down in the southeast of England, and I think given the success of the recent KSW event at Wembley Arena, the UFC can kind of piggyback on that success a little bit. Put Joanna in the London event and try and piggyback on that success. Keep that momentum going for the Polish MMA fans, and hopefully they'll come out in force and support their champion as she defends her belt against the one person who's given her some sort of problems in the octagon. That's Claudia Gadelha. That'll be a great fight. I'd like to see that. That would be a great co-main event. It would be the main event. It would be the main event if it wasn't for the fact that Anderson Silva and Michael Bisping were on the card. That's pretty much it. Looking down the rest of the main card, I've tried to pit some domestic talent in there. I've tried to put some entertaining stuff together. So let's see what we've got here. Welterweight fight. Tom Breeze. Tom Breeze, for me, is probably the best British fighter to hit the UFC, possibly since Michael Bisping. He seems to have the lot. He's big, he's strong, he's technically very, very good. The one thing we don't know that much about at the moment is just how advanced he is on the mat. But he's up there at TriStar in Montreal, working his game up there with Firas Zahabi, working alongside the likes of Rory MacDonald and of course the great Georges St Pierre. So he's in a good spot to progress his game, and I would put him in there with ranked opposition for this next fight. Rory MacDonald said something interesting going into the fight. Tom Breeze took on Carl Pendred in Dublin, and Rory MacDonald said that he thought that Tom Breeze was top 15 caliber already. He went through Carl Pendred relatively easily, looked very impressive in doing so. So let's see if he is top 15 caliber. Let's stick him in there with a guy who's in those rankings, who's been around a bit and has seen some top level action. Rick Story's the man for this job. Rick Story has been in there. He's taken on prospects. He's taken on contenders. He's got a win over Johnny Hendricks, who obviously went on to become the UFC welterweight champion after that fight. So this is a guy who's been around the block. He's seen pretty much everything there is to see in the UFC welterweight division, and he would be an excellent test for Tom Breeze. And we'll find out just how good the guy is. I think he's top 15 caliber as well. I think you don't just want to sling him in with the absolute elite level guys, sort of, you know, like the top 5 guys, because that division is an absolute murderer's row when you look at sort of 6 or 7 and above. Rick Story, I think, is the perfect introduction to the rankings for him. It will give him a real test. I mean, this is a guy who beat Gunnar Nelson not that long ago, so I think that would be a good test for him. Joe Duffy says that Tom Breeze is going to be the first Brit to win a UFC World Championship belt. So if he's going to do that, then he's going to have to get past guys like Rick the Horror Story. So we'll put that fight on the card. That goes on the main card as well. We'll slot that in at number 3. Number 4 is an absolute no-brainer of a fight. The fight happened in Dublin. It needs to happen again. It's a fight that everyone came away talking about. It's another welterweight fight. Darren Till versus Nicholas Dalby. It was a superb fight. Darren Till looked outstanding for 2 rounds, and then I think he popped his shoulder out and had all sorts of problems in that final round. Dalby came down the stretch like an absolute train. He saw his chance and really went for it. Got himself a 10-8 round and earned himself a well-deserved draw. But no one likes draws in mixed martial arts. I know the 2 guys were relatively content. I wouldn't say either of them were happy, but they were relatively content with their night's work. I'd put them both in again. Let's see them go back in there. Someone's O has got to go. That's what we said before the fight, and neither guy lost it. So we'll put them back in again. Let's see them do it again. I'm sure they'd both be more than happy to renew acquaintances inside the octagon for a rematch. Stick it on the main card, which will be on TV in America. Let's make stars of these 2 guys. They're 2 European welterweights who are very, very capable of progressing in that 170 pound division, and I think giving them that sort of audience would be beneficial to both guys, win or lose, because you know they're going to deliver something special, just as they did in Dublin. So we'll put that on the card. That's in slot number 4. Now, just to talk about it, it's normally on a Fight Pass card 4 fights on the main card. Looking back at how the Fox broadcasts have tended to deal with these EMEA Fight Pass shows when they've put them on telly, they've had 6 fights on the main card. Looking back to Glasgow, for example, 6 fights on that main card. So we're going to do 6 fights on the main card here. Fight number 5, Brad Pickett deserves to be on the main card. This could well be his swan song, his final fight in the UFC. And to go out in his hometown would be the perfect way to do it. Maybe, we'll see him do that sort of iconic gesture of putting his gloves down in the octagon, saying a few words, and then walking away with the crowd on their feet. That would be a lovely way for him to go. Who's he going to fight against? This is the question. Who do you put him in against? I've got 2 names here, and it really depends on how you want to approach this. If you want to stick him in there with an experienced guy who's going to provide a solid test, then you put him in with someone like Joe Soto. If you want to put him in there with another person who maybe you want to test them against Pickett and see how they're progressing in their career, you go for a young gun like Cody Garbrandt. And Cody Garbrandt, coming out of Team Alpha Male, he would be a very exciting dance partner for Brad Pickett. Pickett obviously took on Thomas Almeida at UFC 189 and was getting the better of things until he caught that flying knee squarely on the chin, which ended his night. Almeida is an absolute superstar. I think we're going to see that this weekend, actually, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He's a potential star, a potential champion of that bantamweight division further down the line. Cody Garbrandt, people are saying maybe he could be a challenger in the years to come. Stick him in there with Brad. Let's see how he gets on. Give him a test. Even if he doesn't get past Brad in that fight, I think that's one that will be a very good learning fight for him. He'll fancy his chances for sure. And Brad Pickett will obviously be all fired up and looking to possibly end his career on a high in his hometown. So we'll put that one in there as well. That's number 5. The final fight on the main card is one that some people will go, no, don't put these 2 together. But I think this fight makes total sense. It's a women's strawweight fight. It's Joanne Calderwood versus Ash Daly. They were roommates. They were good friends on The Ultimate Fighter. And they were allies in the house. There was an awful lot of stuff going on in that house that didn't sit too well with either of those 2, and they managed to stick it together. And I know when Ash was having a few problems, anxiety issues and things like that in the house, I know Joe was there as a good friend in the house. But this is the fight business, and the UFC strawweight division is not the deepest. It's certainly full of talent. And skill and sort of vitality. It's not a boring division by any means. There's just not many of them at this stage. So I think, considering where they both are in their careers, I think the fight makes a whole lot of sense. It would be a cracking fight to kick off a main card as well. It's got interest within the local region, obviously Ireland versus Scotland. I think it makes complete sense. I mean, Joe Calderwood is looking to back up her impressive win in Glasgow on her home territory. Ash Daly is looking to carry on her momentum from her win on her home territory in Dublin against Erica Almeida. Why not put them together in a Scotland versus Ireland match on neutral territory in England? But it's still local for the pair of them. I think it's relevant. I think it's local. Stylistically, I think it will deliver. I think it'll be a fun fight. That's my main card, and that's the fight I would use to kick things off. Right, prelims. There is only one fight that can that can headline the prelims, and it's a spot that is very, very important on a fight card. It's the fight that really sets the tone for the main card. The arena is usually pretty full by the time that fight comes around, and it's one that really does set the tone. And this is the perfect fight for it. Mike Wilkinson versus Makwan Amirkhani. These 2 have been jabbing at each other on social media. Amirkhani wants to repay Wilkinson for the way Wilkinson knocked out his teammate Nicholas Backstrom. Amirkhani trains with Backstrom up there at All Stars in Stockholm. He wants to exact a little bit of revenge on the Brit, and the Brit is more than happy more than happy to oblige Amir Khani. And there seems to be a little bit of legitimate beef going on there. There's been a couple of interviews have been done, and yeah, if this fight doesn't get made for London, then I would be gobsmacked. I really would. This fight absolutely makes itself. It's selling itself already, and no one's actually signed it and announced it. So hopefully that fight will get signed, will get announced, and the best place to put it is on that headline spot on the preliminary card. Absolute no-brainer. Get them on the card. Amir Khani, Wilkinson, job done. That's your featured preliminary fight. Next, Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray, Scottish lightweight, undefeated in the UFC, came in at short notice in Poland, submitted Marcin Bandel, and has gone on since then, and he's now won 3 on the spin. Superb stuff for him. Let's give him another test. Let's stick him in there with another European guy who will take him a deep way into a fight. Let's put him in with a guy who can sell a fight and will be entertaining for the local media. Let's put him in with Nick Hein, the sergeant. I'm a big fan of Nick Hein. I think he's a real character. I think he's a solid fighter. His game is improving. He's obviously got a judo base, and that was his main sort of stock in trade, if you like, when he first started in the UFC. But he's now out there training with Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand with Roger Huerta and James McSweeney and people like that. And his striking is coming on, and we saw that in his last fight in Saitama. So that would be a good fight. It'd be a fun fight. I think it would. Again, it's one that I think the media would take an interest in. You know, we've got 2 guys there who've got a good story behind them. That's an easy one to make. I'd make that one in a heartbeat, no problem at all. Next up, welterweights. Again, trying to keep it relatively European for relevance purposes, and you know, we're trying to grow the market over here as well. So we got the international superstars at the top of the card. You need to grow your local guys further down, and probably the most underrated British fighter currently in the UFC right now, the quiet man of the British UFC contingent, is Leon Rocky Edwards. The guy is absolutely superb. His hands are fantastic. The way he dealt with Seth Brzezinski in Poland was just jaw-dropping. 8-second knockout, unbelievable stuff. Earned himself 50 grand on his UFC. I think it was his debut or his second appearance. I think it might have been his second appearance. Certainly was his first win. And I'd stick him in with Nico Musoki, a very well-rounded, very experienced operator. At European level, he's been around the UFC for a little bit. He's had a few fights now. I think that would make a lot of sense. Musoki got beat by Albert Tumanov, who is a very highly rated prospect at 170 pounds. But he took him the distance, and Tumanov is known as a very, very dangerous striker. So Musoki's got the octagon smarts to see himself through to the judges' scorecards. If Leon Edwards can outperform Tumanov in that fight, then that will make a few people sit up and take notice. So that's one I'd get on the card. Leon Edwards, Nico Musoki at 170 pounds. Now we're in Great Britain. We're in London. We've had an event in Glasgow. Yet we have, to the best of my knowledge, and I have looked back, we have never had an England versus Scotland fight in the UFC. Why not have one? There's one we can make. And we can make it a featherweight. Rob Whiteford. Rob Whiteford will fight anybody. He's a real character. I've got a load of time for him. He's a real character in interviews. He fights with his heart on his sleeve, and you know, when he gets it right, like he did in Glasgow, it's explosive. It didn't go his way in Dublin, and he will be itching to get back to winning ways, and he'll want to get back in there as soon as possible, for sure. Arnold Allen is the guy I would put in there with him. Arnold Allen, another up-and-coming talent from the UK. Luke Barnett says that this guy is the absolute real deal. And the way he came in on very, very short notice, took on a very experienced operator in Alan Omer in Berlin. And things weren't going his way to start with. Maybe octagon jitters, maybe he just wasn't 100%. But he turned the fight around and he won. And he won impressively in the end. And he looks like he could be a serious talent to come out of the UK. Allen versus Whiteford, I think, would be great. I think Allen's got a very sort of laid back demeanour about him that I quite like. Whiteford's a bit more intense. I think the pair of them will make for an interesting interview or two during fight week for not just for the local journalists but for the international guys as well. I think it would be a fight of interest beyond these shores, and that's one that I think will be well worth adding to the card. And whoever wins that could walk away saying that they are Britain's best 145 pounder. So that's a good one to stick on there. We've got two more spaces left on this fight card. It's a 12 fight card, and a guy who also fought in Dublin. You know, I'm looking at the time frames here, and assuming that everybody's okay, you know, these guys can fight no problem at all, and it keeps them active. And Gareth Mcclellan, the Soulja boy from South Africa, claimed his maiden UFC win in Dublin. I think he won with like 2 seconds to go, finishing Bubba Bush by TKO. It was a very late stoppage, to be fair. It should have been with about 6 or 7 seconds to go. The referee didn't exactly cover himself in glory in that fight. But nonetheless, Gareth Mcclellan certainly did. And he's now established a foothold in the UFC. And he needs a fight. And the best thing for him and the best thing for South Africa as a market, and bear in mind we're in EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa, to put Gareth Mcclellan on the London card will then put him in a fight which is relevant to the South African primetime TV. So that's a very important aspect for the UFC to consider. They've just signed a TV deal down there with Fox Sports, one of many deals they've done with Fox Sports across Europe, and to put Gareth Mcclellan on that card in a position where he could potentially get some TV time down there in his home country would be a big win for the UFC, and if Mcclellan is successful, a big win for him. He needs an opponent, and you can just pick anyone out of the UFC middleweight division and sling them in there. But I try and look for storylines. I try and look for something relevant, something that gives the fight a little bit more heat, a little bit more interest. And I think I found someone. Daniel Kelly. Daniel Kelly is from Australia. He's a 4-time judo Olympian for Australia. And anyone who knows anything about international sport will be able to confirm Australia versus South Africa is one of the biggest international sporting rivalries you will find anywhere on the planet. Obviously, it's predominantly rugby based, but there's cricket as well. But the rivalry between those two nations is a very strong one indeed. And again, it makes a whole boatload of sense to stick them both together and say, right, here's the best guy from South Africa, here's the best guy from Australia. Let's see who the top man is. And obviously, in London, we've got a big Australian contingent as well. And there's a fair few South Africans living in the capital as well. So, you know, bringing that international flavour just from the London population, I think that, you know, there are benefits there too. So let's get those two on the card. Middleweight bout: Gareth Soulja Boy Mcclellan versus Daniel Kelly, 4-time judo Olympian. I think it gives you a lot of relevance in their key markets. So that one makes sense to me. We're down to one more fight. So we're talking about the fight that's going to kick off the night now. And the fight that I would make is a Brit. I'll put a Brit on there. The best thing to do is find a Brit who's got very, very strong support. You want the crowd in your arena early doors. You want an atmosphere. You want to build the show. So the best man for the job is Scott Askham. Scott fought in Dublin. The fight did not go his way. He lost by split decision to Krzysztof Jotko. It was a very, very close fight. It was definitely a coin flip. I think Askham won the third round. Jotko won the first round. Second round was anyone's guess, and the judges scored that round. Well, two of them gave it to Jotko, and he got the split decision win. Askham will want to be getting straight back in there. He wants on that London card for sure, and getting him in there on the first fight of the night against another guy who likes to stand and bang will be the perfect way to kick things off in the O2 on February the 27th. The man for the job is the head busser, Clint Hester. Let's stick him in there. Ex-professional boxer, loves nothing better than to stand and bang. I think him and Askham could serve up a really good, entertaining scrap to kick things off on that first fight on the UFC Fight Night London card. Askren's going to be desperate for a win. He'll have a load of fans coming down there. So the stands will be loud from the very first fight of the night. It will look great for TV. It will look great for Fight Pass. All good for business. And it puts a Brit out there straight away. And if he picks up a win in that first fight, then that just cranks the atmosphere up just that little bit extra as we head further through the fight card. Anyway, that's my fight card. Half an hour later, it took a bit longer than I anticipated. But yeah, we're talking 12 fights. Bottom to top, we'll go through them. Scott Askren v Clint Hester at middleweight. Gareth Mcclellan versus Daniel Kelly at middleweight. Arnold Allen versus Rob Whiteford at featherweight. Then Leon Edwards versus Nico Musoki at welterweight. And the lightweight bout between Stevie Ray and Nick Hein. And the headline prelim, Mike Wilkinson versus Makwan Emekani at featherweight. Then we move on to the main card. First fight in the main card, women's strawweight fight, Joanne Coldwood versus Ash Daly. Followed by bantamweight fight, Brad Pickett versus either Joe Soto or Cody Garbrandt. I'd probably lean towards Cody Garbrandt for that one. Then we've got the welterweight rematch from Dublin, Darren Till versus Nicholas Dalby. Then Tom Breeze versus Rick the Horror Story in the third fight from the top of the bill. Into the co-main event, battle for the UFC Women's Strawweight Championship, Joanne and Jacek versus Claudia Gadelha. And then Michael Bisping versus Anderson Silva in our main event of the evening. Right, that is my 12 fight card. You may think that was complete lunacy. You might think there's some good ones in there. Please do let me know. Leave a comment below or tweet me, or if this is on Audio Boom, leave a comment on there. However you see this, get in touch with me and let me know. What fights do you want to see on that card? What do you think of the ones that I've suggested? Would you pay money to come down and watch that fight card? I'd like to think you might. I think it's not a bad card. Obviously, this isn't a pay-per-view card. This is a Fox Sports card at best. If not, it'll just be a UFC Fight Pass card. So you need to just... We have to be realistic in our expectations in terms of what we're going to get. But Michael Bisping versus Anderson Silva sells that card on its own. But we stack it with some domestic talent, some interesting matchups, and stuff that's relevant to the region, and I think we've got ourselves a half-decent fight card. As I say, drop me a comment, drop me a tweet. I'm at Simon Head on Twitter. Let me know what you think, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.